If you're thinking about moving to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, or just want to know what it's like there, you're in luck. This episode, I have Sandy Schwartz from Fort Lauderdale with me. This is Wanna Move There, the podcast devoted to helping Central Pennsylvanians get the info they need to decide whether they want to move somewhere else out of the area, like Fort Lauderdale. I am your host, DerekBicksler, realtor of 15 years. I grew up on the Hill in Harrisburg, went to Mechanicsburg High School, go Wildcats, and went up to Penn College of Technology in Williamsport for mass communications, I told Sandy earlier, which he also went for. Contact me if you need to buy or sell a home. I've been a realtor for 15 glorious years here in Central Pennsylvania. Call me, text me, email me, throw a rock through my window, send a carrier pigeon, whatever you need to do. We still need inventory pretty badly, and Sandy's going to let us know what it's like down there, if it's the same. And it has, I will say, it's died down slightly, so it's a kind of a good time for buyers to get back out there. A reminder that whether you're watching on live or on a replay, ask a question in the comments or tell us where you're watching from. And if we don't see it during the episode, we'll come back later and address your comments. There's a lot going on here with all the buttons and everything, so sometimes we miss those things. And a reminder that all the replays are on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, I already said that one, iTunes, Spotify, all the audio places, so wherever you like to consume your content, it is there. And now, without further ado, I will bring in Sandy Schwartz. I'm going to bring up your bio so I can tell everybody a little bit about you, but in the meantime, say hi to everybody.
Hey everybody, I'm Sandy Schwartz from sunny South Florida, but it's not sunny today. It's great.
And that's going to be our first question after I read your bio is the climate, so you can tell us about that. So I'll tell everybody a little bit about you. Sandy grew up in Buffalo, New York, so not in Florida, a little bit further north in the colder regions. He went to boarding school outside of Buffalo. We talked about that a little bit. He went to Adelphi College in Garden City, Long Island. And I've got, instead of my form, I have it on a piece of paper. That's why I'm looking down and not at all you guys. But his favorite color is blue. His favorite food is Peking duck. Is that the kind of duck you see hanging in the window when you walk past the places?
Actually, it's not. It's a specialized, it might be. I take that back. It might be. But it's like it takes 3 days to cook. There's one great restaurant in New York City that I get it all the time. There happens to be a Peking duck down the street from where I live here in Florida. So we're
okay. So it's a long process that takes a while.
Yeah. It's
gotcha. Well, if I ever come... What is it like a stir fry with vegetables and stuff?
No, they basically cook the duck. It's like crispy brown, and then they bring it out to your table and they chop, and they put it into pancakes, which are like tortillas. They put some scallions and what else? They put cucumbers and some duck sauce and roll it up and eat it like a burrito, and it's deadly good.
That sounds pretty great. And the place is called Peking Duck.
There's one on 53rd Street, which is my favorite. It's called the Peking Duck House. And then there's one here in Pompano called the Peking Duck House.
Nice. So if you're down there, hit it up.
Yeah, definitely.
And you don't have any pets, but you did say that you had one dog twice. Tell me a little bit about that.
I had a dog when I lived in Dallas, and I bought a house there, and I kept going to my backyard after work going, Where's my dog? So I went to the SPCA. I adopted this really cute little dog that I got 13 great years out of it. And then the second dog was an Australian Shepherd Beagle mix. The second dog was a Brussels Griffon, which we brought back from Russia. He was my new wife's dog. And when we got married, she brought him over, and he was the coolest little dog in the world.
How do you transport a dog like that?
Through Lufthansa, actually, with a lot of money. This is a very expensive dog. 20 years ago, it was about 5,000 euros.
Wow!
As a puppy, this is a very expensive dog. But
so you definitely want to bring it with you if you're moving, and you can't just leave it there.
Yeah, well, we left it with the guy. It's a long story, but her best friend's dad bought the dog. After a year of her going over there visiting, the dog kept going to her, so they said, let's give her the dog. And so that's the dog.
Is that a little dog?
A little dog, 10 pounds.
So these days you could probably take it with you in the plane, possibly.
Oh, yes. He was very cool. He would just sit there and sleep. I actually used to drive for Uber for a little while, and he used to be in the car with me. And as soon as somebody came in as a customer, he would just lie in the passenger seat and be very cool. He was awesome.
Awesome. Perfect companion, especially when you're Uber driving, to have someone there with you that won't speak or get in the way, but can be your like little friend while you're out there.
Well, when we were by ourselves, he would bark all the time, telling me, "You're going the wrong way. You're going the wrong way."
And there's a lot of sitting around. Sometimes when there's not a next ride, I've heard that you're like sitting around waiting for the next ride. So you're probably working or.
Well, you try to cheat the system by going to the airport, and there will be 300 cars there. And if it's not a busy airport, you could wait an hour to 2 hours for a ride, which doesn't usually work out because they're usually going maybe 10 minutes away. So I learned that one the hard way.
Somebody should do a Uber Lyft or a rideshare confessions. Remember they used to have taxi cab confessions?
They're out there, definitely. Yeah,
that'd be awesome. Yeah. And you mentioned your wife, Svetlana, who is Russian and came from Russia with her dog, you said, and you don't have any kids. And your hobbies are golf, rock crawling, which I want to hear a little bit about, Bills football, and the New York Yankees baseball. So the rock crawling, this is like the Jeeps with you barely put any air in your tires, yada, yada, all that stuff?
The air down to like 6 pounds. Sometimes if you have beadlocks, you can go even lower, but you put a lot of steel on these things. Basically, you spend about $30,000 for the Jeep, and then you put another $20,000 of steel underneath. And it's lots of rock. I was in Southern California, and the first time I went out, we were in front of this big boulder field, and I said, "Well, what am I to expect?" And they said, "You're going to hear banging." I'm like, "Banging? What's that?" He says, "You'll see." And so I come off the top of the first rock, and I thought my bones were going to shatter. It was so loud and so hard. I'm like, "Oh my God." So what the hell was that? And they go, "It's banging." Can I say that? Can I use the H word? So,
yeah, sure. I think Glenda's episode was the first episode we had a couple swear words. I just have to check the not for kids button or whatever on YouTube, but it's fine. Right. Yeah. But so the rock crawl, so the banging is both the truck and your bones being shook around, kind of.
Yeah. But it was so much fun. It's actually a great family sport, is rock crawling, off-roading, because there's a lot of bonding time, which is really amazing.
Because you actually work together. You're not out there by yourself. Most videos I've seen is there's a bunch of you that kind of go out, and then you get to a really hard spot and everybody gets out and spots for you and says, go a little bit, stop, don't turn this way, do this. Because it's not just like rolling over a bunch of rocks. There's technical things about it, right?
Yeah. I used to work at a network out in California, and one of my friends decided, based on my Jeep, he went and bought himself one. It was brand new, $50,000. And he took it up onto this ridge, which wasn't very hard, but he got stuck sideways. And my friends were actually jumping on his Jeep. And it's like, no. And it was so much fun.
And you use winches? Do you all have a winch on the front, back, whatever?
We have 2 winches on each end. It depends on how much money you want to spend. You can spend a lot of money. I usually spent, if I broke something, it was like $1,000 every weekend. So it was not a cheap thing, but it was so much fun because I was a video editor for many years. And so to do that, you need to relax. And that way I got out into the wilderness, and it was so much fun.
Yeah, it sounds like it could be expensive. I know my mountain bike, kind of the same thing. When you get this brand new mountain bike, you're like, yay. And then it feels bad. You're banging it on stuff, and you kind of try not to bang it on stuff. And then you realize, all right, this is the sport. This is banging on stuff. It's going to break. I think I pay more to maintain my bike than my car, for sure. Not even think.
Exactly.
So that sounds super fun. I could talk about that all day. But we won't, I guess. We'll talk about real estate a little bit. But before we do that, let's talk about your background a little bit more. I like to know what you were like as a kid. Obviously, you weren't a real estate agent back then. You weren't editing videos back then. So back maybe in boarding school, were you in band? Did you play any sports, debate club, any extracurriculars or anything?
Well, the school was really small at the time, didn't have a lot of funding. So we basically played lacrosse. And we played
Wait. It was a hoity-toity, very expensive school, but they didn't have any funding?
Well, to do all that other stuff, you still need funds. I mean, they got to pay for the teachers, and they got to pay for it. It was 95 kids when I started there, and when I graduated, there were 115. So it sounds like a lot of money, but you have to maintain the buildings. I mean, the place was founded in 1926, so they had a lot of maintenance on those buildings. And they had a big piece of property that had their own ski hill. We skied, yes. We had a great racing team, ski team.
Nice. And you were located within some other school district, I'm assuming. So if somebody wanted to play basketball or something, can you then, if you go to a private school, can you play like on the public school team?
Well, now they have a basketball team, but they didn't then. There was none of that. Can my guy at my school come play at your school? That didn't exist.
Yeah, we probably have enough players already. If you want to play here, then go here.
You go here, exactly. But
that's awesome.
It was a beautiful countryside. It was in a valley outside of town called East Aurora, which is where Fisher Price and Moog, the synthesizer fame and the car parts fame. That's all based there, and it was so pretty. I love being there. Do a lot of hiking.
Hiking. Ooh, that appeals to me for sure. You're saying the magic keywords for me.
Yeah.
So what, after high school, you went to college for radio, film, and television. Was there a reason you went into that when you went to college?
Well, I only went to college for 2 years. 2 years. The first year I went for marketing, actually. That was I thought I was going into advertising. My whole family was in advertising. And then I took a year off and I worked in a factory down here in Florida building professional recording equipment. And then I went back to school and I said, I'm going to just try jazz, sculpture, film 101. And that's how I learned about film editing, and I fell in love with it. And I said, at the end of the second semester, I said, that's what I want to do for the rest of my life. And then
what did you do for work after you studied it?
I actually went into the film business. I was working for a film editor that was doing CoverGirl commercials, GMC trucks, that kind of stuff. They had an office in Detroit and in New York City. I used to go watch Woody Allen play his clarinet every Monday evening. There was a bar right down the street, right downstairs from us. That was where Woody Allen used to play clarinet. And that was so much fun. And I then went from job to job, and I learned to do what they call color correction, which was really cool. And I worked on a ton of music videos for Salt and Pepper, Biz Markie, Kid and Play, Fresh Prince, Lenny Kravitz, Metallica. I worked with Michael Jackson when Martin Scorsese did his Bad video. I worked on Baseball, the documentary by Ken Burns. I worked on a show called The Equalizer, which is not the same Equalizer as they have now. It was an old British guy who was ex-CIA, and he used to help people in distress. And that was
the current Equalizer is Queen Latifah? Is that who it is?
Yeah.
I don't watch it, but I think I saw a commercial.
Yes, it is.
So when you worked for this editor, is like a freelance editor that gets jobs and then you were like his apprentice or mentee or something?
I started out sweeping floors there, but no, he was staff editor at an editorial house. There were 3 of them, and then each one had its own assistant. And then as the senior assistant went, then the juniors would move up, follow them up the chain, and then they would become editors after that. But I was staff for over 10 years. And then I got fired from my last full-time job in Dallas. And my boss said, "You're going to thank me for this someday." And I said, "Oh yeah, sure I am." And I did. It was one of the best things that could have happened to me.
That's awesome. And you named some big names who I obviously know, and any of the Gen Xers out there for sure know all those hip hop names. And I grew up with hip hop, so I love all the names you mentioned there. Kid and Play, Salt and Pepper, Will Smith. My ex-wife used to say I'm gay for Will Smith. I love me some Will Smith. Any movie, anything with Will Smith. Pretty much Will Smith, Jim Carrey, and Zach Morris. You put those 3 together, that's pretty much what I'm made out of, is those 3 people, I think. So that's awesome. When you're working on a project like that, are you on set ever, or you never really meet the people? You're not on set, you're somewhere else?
Sometimes I would be on set, but usually I was working in a facility that had all the equipment, because it was very expensive, very large equipment. I had controllers that were like 6 feet long that I had to twist the buttons and turn the knobs and play with the trackballs. And it was a really interesting job. I really
So
loved
then,
it.
do you get to go to like premieres? Do they have premieres for music videos and that kind of thing?
No, I didn't do that kind of stuff. I was not about networking at the time. I was just about doing my job and going home. And I worked really hard, and anybody who worked with me loved me. So that was.
Is that something that editors get asked to do? Like for a movie, if there's an edit, do they get at, like if you wanted to go, you could go to the premiere or something?
Yeah, sometimes they do. I didn't work on a lot of movies. I worked on commercials, TV shows, documentaries, that kind of thing. And it usually just shows on the air, so there's not usually a premiere. There was one I did about the making of the movie Giant, which was James Dean's last film. And I actually did speak at South by Southwest the first year they had film. And that was down in Austin, and that was really cool. And that was a fun project. I love documentaries.
Yeah, that sounds super fun. And then last question about the video editing, because I like this topic, and like I said, I love Will Smith and all these artists that you name. So when you're editing a music video, how much total footage do you get to then whittle down to that 3 minutes or so?
Well, it depends on the director and it depends on the look. There was a period where they figured out how to shoot 6 frames a second in sync, which was a real difficult thing to do because they were shooting on film and you had to sync up the sound to the film. And I had a director that shot 28,000 feet, which came to about, I want to say 10, 12 hours of footage. And you have to go through and color correct it, and there's all kinds of blurries and streakies and stuff like that. And then you get it down to like 3 minutes. You're basically just trimming out all the fat, getting rid of, and finding the pieces. Yeah.
And do they tell you what they want? Do they give you direction, or they're like, here's the stuff?
Sometimes they do. Sometimes they'll say, okay, I want to use that piece, and I want to use that piece. And then sometimes they'll say, just do something really cool. And then you got to come up with ideas.
I said it was going to be the last question, but it's not. I have one more. So are they sitting behind you sometimes? Or are you left to your own devices, or sometimes they want to be there?
Well, the ones that sit behind you, those are usually the biggest pains in the butt. But a lot of times they'll say, here's the footage and show me what you can do. And I'll just come up with something, and they'll come in and say either I hate it, it sucks, or they'll say, oh my God, that's amazing, and they'll just do little tiny tweaks. I directed one commercial. One of the towers of a radio station fell down and killed 3 people, and so they had to build a new tower. And I actually directed a commercial for them to say, hey, we're back. And I had to fly to San Francisco and shoot Dave Cause. And then I came back to Dallas and I basically cut the piece and it was done. But I left one piece kind of hanging in the wind, kind of loose. And I said, so is there anything that you guys want to see, want to change? And I would have to basically point to the shot to see if they want to, oh yeah, let's fix that. And that way they have their little thumbprint on it. People
That's
like
cool.
to think that they're part of it. So you do that and it makes them happy.
Right. Just appease them, sure. You humor them, yeah. and then maybe it doesn't even end up being in there. Yeah, sure, I'll do that. And then you got to do your own thing later, maybe.
Oh, I would have clients sitting behind me when I'm doing color correction. It's such fine tuning. And they would say, can you fix this and make it a little less green or a little less this? And I would be going to the controls. Before I got there, they go, stop, that's perfect. I'm like, oh, okay.
Great, yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that sounds like a pretty exciting life. So why did you leave video editing to do what you're doing now, to be a real estate agent?
Well, honestly, until I moved to Florida, I'd been doing it for over 35 years. And then I came here to help take care of my mom, who has since passed away, but she had a great life. And I basically tried to get busy doing editing, and nobody wanted to pay me anywhere near my rate. And then the ones who would pay me then would complain about the cost of the invoice. And I said, you know what? I can't keep doing this. It's like banging your head against the wall. Wasn't enough money to support myself down here. And, I used to make $100 to $200 an hour. And I used to make like $600 a day sometimes, and Now I'm making $25 an hour, and I work 5 hours, and they want me to cut that in half. I'm like, not worth it.
Yeah, and probably not as high profile. I mean, Florida's not a main place for film and television and all that kind of stuff. So what kind of jobs did you even do?
It was for a while, but I was doing mostly, like corporate events. Like, we have a new pier right down the street from where I live. I did a video about that new bridge. The city of Pompano would hire this person, and she would hire me to do the editing. She would have somebody else shoot it, and it was okay. But it was just, she was like, she never budgeted enough, and can you save me a couple dollars? I'm like, great. So I finally laid down the law when I started doing real estate. I said, if you want me to work for you, this is how much it's going to cost. No questions asked. She hasn't told me since.
I feel you. I do digital marketing for small businesses and other realtors sometimes, and it's always they think it's going to be really cheap, but it's $100-$200 an hour. And I used to skimp, but now that's my rate. And if you don't want that, then I'll go sell a house instead of doing this. Yeah, right. Totally. So when you made the leap, why did you decide to do real estate? You needed something else to do to bring income in. Why real estate?
I did a lot of different things. I was taking care of my mother. So I started going in home health care because you're being of service. And I thought that was pretty cool until I would get two people that had Alzheimer's, and one would be totally nuts. The other one would be totally sane. And then they'd flip flop, and the other one would be threatening me with a knife. Get out of my house. Get out of my house. And I said, I got to do something else. And my wife had always said, you should go into real estate. And I just said, no, that's just too much work. Got to take tests. I don't test well. And so she took a class, and 2 weeks into it, she said, come on with me. And I said, okay, I figure. I was driving for Uber, so I could take a couple hours every week and take the class. And when I finished the class, my nephew, who is a very strong earner down here, he said, come work with me. And all I was doing was harvesting his leads, handling his websites, that kind of thing. And he makes a lot of money. He's very successful. And then a year later, I actually took my test last February, and I passed, and it's been go since then. It's been great.
So what about Svetlana? Is she also doing it, or did she not end up doing it?
She never took the test. She just, because that was right when COVID started. So she didn't get a chance to take the test, and she really didn't want to. I think she did it because she wanted me to do it. And she does home health care now. She takes care of very nice people that just need help. So
you guys kind of switched. She kind of mind tricked you into doing it. That's pretty awesome. Hats off to Svetlana for that little mind game trick there.
Yeah, she's my Yoda.
Yeah. That's awesome. So now you're in real estate down there in Fort Lauderdale, a lot warmer than Buffalo where you grew up. And we're going to talk about the climate a little bit as our first thing. But first, I am going to bring up the map here for people that don't know where Fort Lauderdale is. And I will zoom in. You can see the United States here. And obviously everybody knows where Florida is. And you can see the little pin down there. And I'm going to zoom in, and you can see that Fort Lauderdale is down there kind of close to Miami. How far from Miami would that be, Sandy?
We're about 40 minutes away, 30 to 40 minutes, depending on traffic. It could be an hour. The highways are pretty old, so they but it's not that far. I actually used to live up near Boca, and that was in 55 miles each way, so that was an hour each way.
Yeah, and you can see that it's on the east coast of Florida and not the Gulf Coast. I've heard that, well, we'll talk about it a little bit. I don't want to bring more questions in. I just want everybody to know where it is. And I'm actually learning a lot about geography as I do these things. I knew Fort Lauderdale was in Florida, but I didn't know where exactly. So this is kind of cool. So now everybody has an idea of where Fort Lauderdale, Florida is. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So tell us a little bit about the climate. Obviously it's hot. It's Florida. What is it like right now? We just hit cold weather. It's starting to get 40s, 50s here. What's it like down there?
Well, I was playing golf yesterday. It was like the first time I played golf in a while, and it was in the low to mid 80s, and that's cold for here. That is cold for here, but it was great. But it's usually in the summertime. It's 95 to 105 every day. In the wintertime, it gets down into the 70s, like December, January. There'll be a cold snap of a couple weeks where it gets down into the 40s, which if you're driving a motorcycle, which I used to do a long time ago, that's not fun. But and we have basically dry season is starting now. It doesn't rain a lot. I mean, it's like it's kind of like, what was it? Truman Show? When he's on the beach, it starts raining over him and it's just over him. It's kind of like that. You have these little rainstorms and then you move a little bit and it's done. And they just, because of the temperature, the heat inversion and stuff like that, you're basically, so the winter, it's very, very dry, and going into the summer it's dry, and then it becomes hurricane season, where it rains every day. And but it's also sunny during the day. It's like it'll be sunny in the morning, and then in the evening the heat will come off the ground and it will start to heat up the clouds and create rain. So we have lots of rain down here. And if there's a hurricane, which there wasn't this year, thank God, it can be pretty devastating.
Yeah, you're right on the coast there, right where it's going to hit landfall. And you touched on what I was going to ask. That's always my main question. Every time I visit Florida, I feel like it storms every day, cats and dogs for like 5-10 minutes. And then all of a sudden, before and after, it's always completely sunny and awesome. You just have to assume there's going to be a rainstorm sometime that day, but it won't last very long. Do those storms last longer during hurricane season?
Sometimes they happen all day long. I mean, if there is a hurricane, like Hurricane Irma came through about 5 years ago, I think. But that was actually centered on the west coast of Florida, and the bands came here. So it was raining. Power went out. And depending on what neighborhood you lived in, power would be out for maybe an hour to weeks. And it doesn't matter how much money you make. If you're in a nice neighborhood with crappy infrastructure, you're going to have a problem with that.
So are generators common in hurricane places like that?
Oh, there you are. Are you back? Well, you're frozen. There you are. Okay.
You were frozen. Now we're back.
No, you were frozen. Okay.
Yeah. So do people have generators because of the hurricanes? Yeah.
My sister has a beautiful home she's lived in for 40 years, right off the intercoastal, and she has a generator that powers her whole property. It's fed by natural gas, actually.
And do you have to ever evacuate? I know a lot of times the evacuation order comes, or we're strongly encouraged, but people usually hunker down and stay there anyway. How does it ever happen? Do people leave?
Well, during that Irma, my wife was doing home health care. She was at her woman's house where she was working, and the woman wouldn't go to her son's house, which was totally decked out with generators and all that. And so my wife was there, and I couldn't reach her because her phone went dead. There's no power for like 2 weeks, and it's a little insane that way. You're worried about people, and you can't get in touch with them. And I was with my mother, who lives inland. So our house, we had old wooden doors on our front, and I actually nailed them shut to make sure. But now we have hurricane-proof doors. The zoning department or somebody in Pompano Beach said, "You've got to change your doors." So we did.
And do places like that have shutters that actually work?
They do. Sometimes they have shutters that totally enclose your house, which means you're in a dark cocoon, which sucks. But most of the newer construction all has hurricane rated windows and doors, and I would feel safe in a hurricane in my house now.
Yeah,
But
and I'm probably the weird one, but I would look forward, I would always like catastrophes. Like here one time we have a big snowstorm, all the power goes out. I'm like, great, I get to get all my gear out and my survival thing and make things happen and maybe have a marshmallow party or something fun that you wouldn't normally do. I kind of like it a little bit sometimes here and there.
well, here, I mean, when there's a hurricane, you can't see anything. It's like snow. I mean, you don't see. I have a building that's maybe 200 yards away from me. Can't see it at all. Can't see the street. It's just crazy. And then there are those that are, got to have the 55-gallon drums of kerosene and water. I mean, I get these giant tubs from Home Depot and I fill it up with water, and I fill up the bathtub. That's what they say. Fill up the bathtub. Make sure you have plenty of water. And have a lot of foods that you can eat that you don't have to cook, that kind of thing.
Huh.
Yeah.
Kind of the prepper lifestyle, scaled down just a little bit to hold you over if you feel like you need to.
Right. It's not like California where, an earthquake can happen at any time. You don't know what's going to happen. I have friends who live through like Northridge and the San Francisco earthquake. And I've been in earthquakes out there, and it's not the same. But this here, if you're okay with getting a little wet, you're fine.
And at least you get some warning. I never thought about that part of it. I say that as a plus about Central PA. We don't really have lots of bad hurricanes or earthquakes or any wildfires or natural disasters or anything. And then I think about the other places that do, and I didn't think about that plus, that if you're in a hurricane place rather than an earthquake place, you at least get some advance warning, and maybe earthquake advanced warning is getting a little bit better, but probably nowhere near what a hurricane you can just see from a satellite. Here's the storm. It's moving this way.
Right. They keep an eye, like when there is a hurricane, they're on 24 hours a day, and they're saying, okay, it just moved 5 miles this way, 6 miles that way. And, and they talk about Puerto Rico and Cuba and how they're getting hit. And how big is the hurricane that? So it's pretty safe, but if it's getting close and you're not out of the state, you're not going.
And then do the quick rainstorms and going away. Is that kind of because of the landscape? Because there's no mountains, or maybe you don't know why, but it's flat there, right? So stuff kind of probably just moves through and keeps moving.
Well, what happens is basically there's prevailing winds. Usually it comes from the ocean, and then it goes across west, but sometimes it comes from the Gulf and it comes east. But it is about the heat. So what happens is the land, is like a radiator, and it holds on, or a heat sink, and it holds on to the heat. We have a door on the west side of our apartment, and when the sun hits it during the summer, you don't want to touch the door on the outside. It'll burn you. And the concrete of the floor, it holds the heat. So in the evening, even if it cools off a little bit, it still radiates out of the ground. So what happens is the heat will radiate off the earth, and then if there's moisture in the air, which there usually is, it creates clouds and it creates rain, and it's like these little storms pop up. So,
and then there's no mountains or hills to keep, like in Central PA, we're in a valley, Susquehanna Valley, so everything comes and sits here. I think somewhere I heard we have 70 days of pure sunshine per year. So the valley really keeps us in the overcast, which doesn't happen in flat places, I guess.
That's what it was like in Buffalo. It would be rainy in the morning and then sunny in the afternoon. Here, when it's sunny, it's usually sunny all day except for little spots of rain. You'll see like little tiny clumps of clouds going over the earth and just dropping rain off when it gets over the land.
Nice,
Yeah.
very cool. I keep thinking somebody needs to invent a drone cloud for shade that like just follows you around and keeps the shade. Or at the amusement park, if you could like rent a virtual cloud or something, that'd be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bring the map up again here to talk about the commute a little bit. So where people that live there, are they retired or are they working? And if they're working, where are they working? Are they working in Fort Lauderdale, or are they commuting down to Miami, or what happens there?
Well, a little history. When there was a guy named Henry Flagler. He's the guy who built the trains that came down here. So this was all swamps at one time. And so he said, well, the rich people need a place to go. So he basically bought up all the land he could find, built trains that went from town to town, and they would build these giant, beautiful palaces or hotels, and the rich people would go and stay there in the winter for like half the season, for half the year. We call that seasonal, or snowbirds. They're snowbirds. They get out of the snow. And then as more wealthy people would move down here, because it's so nice down here, you would need support people, so people would move down here for jobs. Used to be, there were ads in the newspaper, do you want to buy some Florida swampland? And the people who were smart and bought it up, they're now wealthy as can be. I know one guy that owned a piece of property that he was a lighting director, and he bought up a piece of property, and it's now one of the most exclusive places in Boca Raton. And
that's funny, because that used to be a saying. If somebody said something ridiculous, oh yeah, if you believe that, I got some swampland to sell you in Florida. So that actually would have been a good thing to do.
Been a good thing to do. Yes, I wish I had known what I know now, because I definitely would have bought some, or I would have convinced my parents to buy some.
Huh. And that brings up a question. When I was flying, when we went skydiving down in Sarasota recently, I was asking the skydiver, my guy, and he didn't know the answer. There are all these, every neighborhood, it seemed like, from the aerial view, has a lake or some kind of water source in the middle of it, but there didn't seem to be any docks or anybody using it for anything. So what is that for? Is that replacing since it was built on swampland, they have to then have retention ponds? Is that what those things are?
I think it's more because every piece of property starts out as a flat piece of dirt. And so for aesthetics, they build lakes, and they put in trees, and they put in grass, and it's all irrigated. But where you see docks are you'll see docks on like some canals that you can't really go anywhere. So there will be docks but no boats. And then you'll see some docks with little boats on these bigger lakes. But what the real cool thing is the rivers that feed the intercoastal. The intercoastal is basically a waterway that goes from Miami all the way to, I think it's Maryland or Pennsylvania. I don't even know how far north it goes. And I live on the barrier island, which is between the intercoastal and the ocean. So what they did is, as they were building out the neighborhoods, they would basically build out these canals, and they look like fingers. And the canals, if they were deep enough, you could put big boats in. And so that's where all the real estate was. So they would cut out these basically, it'd be one block that goes out to the end of the finger, and then they would build houses on each side, and they'd put docks on them, and you can have boats that go right out to the intercoastal. You can go out to the ocean or wherever you want to go. But there was a time,
cool.
Yeah, there was a time when the intercoastal didn't go all the way through. There were parts where you had to portage, that kind of thing.
Gotcha. And then everybody gets to say that their house has water frontage and dock and all that kind of stuff, which makes it worth more, I'm guessing. Back to the commuting. I got us off the topic. But so if somebody was driving from like Fort Lauderdale to Miami, how long would that drive take?
Fort Lauderdale, Miami, anywhere from a half an hour to 45 minutes or an hour, depending on traffic. Okay. We have rush hour here. It used to be that if it was off season, there was almost never traffic all the time. But now it gets busy. If you go through Boca Raton, there's always traffic in Boca Raton, especially on Route 95, which is a giant superhighway that goes all the way to Canada. So
right. And then the people like the service workers in Fort Lauderdale, all the people that live there year round, do they live in Fort Lauderdale, or do they move kind of to a suburb?
I mean, Fort Lauderdale, I'm not sure what the population is. It could be 300,000, 500,000 people. That's a big town. Miami's got a couple million. Boca Raton is a little smaller. West Palm Beach and Palm Beach is about the same size as Boca Raton. But, as you move away from the exclusive, expensive areas, it gets cheaper and cheaper. There are apartments that you can get into and people can do. I mean, I remember when I was in California, they say, oh, it's so expensive to live there. I go, yeah, but there's still people that work at places like Mickey D's and those fast foods. They're not making $10 an hour, yet they're still able to support themselves. So there's always some place for people to go, depending on what they do for a living.
And then that's a good segue actually into what the major industries and employers are. I'm assuming tourism is the main driver of economics down there.
Yes, that's what built Florida. Tourism and retirement, because Florida is very warm. So I don't know if you remember the movie Scarface with Al Pacino. Okay.
Oh yeah.
They were down in South Beach, which is in Miami. But you saw these people in these rockers on the patios of all of those buildings, which are now expensive hotels and restaurants and stuff. And that's where they live. That's where the assisted living facilities were, near the ocean, because it was not a lot of population in those areas. But tourism has always been a huge part of it. We have a cruise industry that is just enormous, and they go out for like a week at a time, maybe 2 or 3 days, sometimes just a day. Then gambling cruises, they go to the Bahamas, which is like an hour away on a boat, or maybe 6 hours, 5 hours, I'm not sure. But tourism is very big because of all the people who have retired here, who, especially the wealthy ones, they need someone to manage their money. So the financial industry is incredibly big down here, because they all need accountants, they all need financial planners, they need all that stuff, as well as real estate. People are buying stuff, especially during this COVID thing, which we'll talk about that a little bit. But there are tons. I mean, all along the ocean, there are these 40, 50 story buildings. Everybody needs someone to buy it, so and depending on the town will determine how expensive it is. I happen to live in one of the least expensive areas of South Florida, which is Pompano Beach. And so you can get a 2-bedroom here for roughly $200,000-$300,000, or if you go to Miami, a 2-bedroom could be $400,000 or $500,000 for the exact same apartment. Plus, then there are association fees associated with that. And also, they're now starting to build a technical world in Miami. They're pushing, technology, just like Silicon Valley. They're actually pumping money into that area. There are big networks like Univision and Telemundo. Basically everything in South Florida, a lot of it deals with South and Central America. So they're like Telemundo and Univision are strictly Hispanic language television, and that's all about south of the border. Cuba.
Yeah, that makes sense. Puerto Rico, Dominican, South America, all that stuff. Yeah, totally.
So, and that's based down here. That's a big industry as well.
And what about colleges? There's a few colleges down around. Isn't there a Fort Lauderdale college?
Not really a Fort Lauderdale college. There used to be a Fort Lauderdale, the Art Institute of Fort Lauderdale, but that kind of got swept away when they started finding out it was kind of a scam. But they have University of Miami, which is a powerful school, great school. FAU, Fort Lauderdale, is I forget what it stands for, but that's in Boca Raton. That's a great school. Lynn University is another one that's up in Boca Raton. Florida Atlantic University is FAU. Florida International University, which is down in Miami, is actually a really good school. They have great football teams. I guess that's a sign of a good school is football. They're up and down the East Coast. They have little divisions everywhere of their school.
What about medical centers? You have obviously everybody has hospitals, and especially down there, probably with retirees and the elderly and seniors and all that, a lot of medical stuff.
Yeah, University of Miami has a gigantic medical center. That's in Miami mostly, but they also have offices up here. There are big hospitals. Holy Cross is a big one in Fort Lauderdale. And then you go up north, there's Boca Regional Hospital. There's one called Bethesda, which is a great hospital. That's really big. And the super huge industry here is home health care. People who are too old to take care of themselves, or they just need support. That's incredibly huge down here. You know, and,
Which you mentioned before, and both of you, well, you were in, and now Svetlana is doing, right? She's still doing it, you said, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then is that through an agency, or do you get your own work, or?
A lot of times it's through an agency. But you can also be an independent, you know, especially if you have like nursing credentials and you can do life-saving stuff. That's, you can go out and basically charge more if you're an independent. They have a thing called hospice care, which is not just person's dying, 3 days later they're dead. Hospice care is about quality of life. So I've known people that have been on hospice care for 2 years because they're basically there to make sure that they're not in pain. That's what hospice care is about. It's not about just letting the person die. So
Right. Yeah, totally. And I guess, go ahead.
That's a big industry too.
Yeah, and it sounds like you could get scale, or you could get scale plus something if you have your nursing degree and all these other, can do CPR and all the other things that might be needed. Is there anything else you want to mention about employers or anything else on that topic?
Well, we have amazing restaurants. We got especially here in Pompano, they've just grown. They've got restaurants along the beach. They've got restaurants near the beach. They have restaurants in buildings. There are apartment buildings that have restaurants, which was unfathomable to me, other than like a restaurant on the street in a building like in New York City. No, these are part of the buildings. They're like little country clubs almost. And
that's awesome. So they're putting amenities in the kind of high-rise situation like they would in a gated community.
Yeah, they have some pretty serious amenities down here. I mean, but you're going to pay for it. You're going to pay. I mean, sometimes they're charging $2 a square foot for your association fees to keep the amenities going, which is pretty.
Right. Somebody has to pay for it, right? And somebody has to replace it, and hopefully they're budgeting correctly so that everybody doesn't get an assessment for $10,000 when a building needs a new roof or something.
Actually, that happens a lot down here, especially now with this Sunside, I forget the name of the town where the building fell. All the buildings are going through a revamping. They call it sometimes 40-year plan. If they're 40 years old, they're going through and checking it out with attorneys and with engineers. We just did a 40+10, which is, we're a 50-year-old building, and our building's in great shape compared to every other building around here. We're like ours is one of the top, and which is it makes me feel safe. And
yeah, I mean, it's good that people are starting to pay attention to it, because a lot of these communities, even up here, are aging and nobody takes into account. We have one building that's kind of similar to a high-rise down there. We have this one building that overlooks the river, and they're very unique. There's nothing else like it in our market. But every time I show one, the first thing I ask is, I want to see the budget, because it's aging, and I know that elevator shaft is getting old. I know the roof is old. I know these big ticket items are old, and it's notorious for not having enough in the budget. So it's definitely something to keep in mind. Right. So you mentioned restaurants and the service industry. Obviously, that's huge there. What else is there to do there?
Well, there's if you like being outside, if you like sweating, there's more golf than you can shake a stick at. They've got airboat rides that go into the Everglades. They got deep sea fishing. They got fishing everywhere. There's a place you can park your boat to fish. People are fishing. Actually, Michelle's husband is Michelle Baldessare in Boca. Her husband's a fisherman. And so
I think they have a charter boat actually now.
Yeah. So that's a huge industry down here. Another big industry, especially in Fort Lauderdale, is yachting. We're the largest yachting community in the world. Absolutely.
Wasn't there just a show there or close to there?
This past weekend, yes.
Is the biggest yacht show in the world?
The biggest outdoor yacht show in the world. And it's nothing but 300-foot yachts, one after another after another.
And you get to tour them, like walk on them?
Yep, yep. They want you
Wow.
to see it. They're hoping you will spend $50 million.
Or rent one for one night for $100,000 a night or something.
Right, right, exactly,
So
exactly.
you have lots of water sports, the fishing, everything else. I'm sort of water skiing and surfing and windsurfing and all that kind of stuff,
Pickleball.
snorkeling.
Don't forget pickleball. Pickleball
Pickleball.
is huge here. I don't get it. It used to be like an old man sport, and now all the young kids are doing it, and it seems like a lot of fun.
Yeah, my dad just started last week playing pickleball. It's getting big up here. I think it started in places like down there, and now it's slowly moving here. And our population is aging also. So in the last 2 years, I've noticed that every single township and municipality's tennis court has gotten new lines painted on it, additional lines. They didn't redo it as pickleball, but they all got pickleball lines. And some even purpose-built pickleball. So should have started a pickleball website about 2 years ago. Would have been doing great.
Good thing, yeah. I know in New York City they're trying to build pickleball courts like in Central Park. You got
Oh, yeah.
that's working on that. So
That makes sense. So what about if somebody wanted to see a concert, a big concert like Justin Bieber or some kind of stadium thing? Where would you go to see a stadium type of concert or venue?
I forget what it's called. It used to be the Hard Rock Stadium. Is it still the Hard Rock Stadium? Well, we have the Hard Rock Hotel, which has got a giant guitar. It's shaped in a giant guitar, and that's a big venue. That's like 8,000 seats. People like the Rolling Stones and everybody you can name go there. There's the Hard Rock Stadium where the Miami Dolphins and the University of Miami play. They fill that place up for stadiums. There's an amphitheater in West Palm Beach called Cruzan, I think. There's what used to be called the AAA. It's where the Miami Heat play. That's 18,000 seats. There's another one for where the Florida Panthers play. That's in Sunrise, which is west of Fort Lauderdale. So we've got lots of venues for events like that.
Yeah, you have a lot of pro sports down near and around you down there, which makes sense. People like to live somewhere where it's nice, so it's probably easy to attract players. And then every pro sports team obviously has a huge stadium, which becomes a venue for the other stuff. So that's cool. And the last question before, because we got 8 minutes left, real quick, where would you fly out of? If you got to fly somewhere else, you're obviously already in a cool vacation spot, but if you need to fly somewhere else, where are you flying out of?
I would fly, well, if I'm going to like Europe or Asia or something like that, usually Miami International, which is a giant hub for American Airlines and a lot of the big airlines and huge airplanes. Fort Lauderdale International Airport flies to like South and Central America, but they have smaller airplanes there. And then you have West Palm Beach, which is another international airport, but that's even smaller. Basically, there's Donald Trump flies back and forth.
So you have some choices as far as that goes too. As we do up here, we've got our Harrisburg close by. I love to use that because it's close there. But if I need to go further, I go to D.C. or New York or Philly or something. So it sounds somewhat similar.
And there are a lot of executive airports here. So
I'm sure Sky Sports actually is what I was gonna. You got water sports, and then also Florida. I know has a lot of sky sports, skydiving, piloting, taking pilot lessons. I know Embry-Riddle, a big pilot school, is down in Florida. So the water sports and the sky sports also are big down there. So we have 7 minutes, 7.5 minutes. So we're gonna rush through this, but not too rushy. What are people going to get for the money down there? If somebody's moving from up here down there, our average price used to be lower. Let's say it's 300-ish here for around the average home. What are we looking at down there? Not for the 300, but what's a kind of an average price?
Well, if you're moving from a $300,000 home down up there, you're probably going to want to almost double that. Especially if you have I'm assuming a $300,000 house is a big house.
You'd get a couple thousand square feet, maybe a 2-car garage, probably a 2-story with a quarter acre.
Right. Yeah. Quarter acre. That almost doesn't exist here because the developers, they basically get a square of land and then they basically have to put so much in for the roads and so much in for the amenities if they're going to have green spaces and whatnot. And so the properties usually don't have a lot of land. If they do, you have to be like farther out west, like Parkland and Coral Springs. They have some bigger pieces of property out there. There's a town called Weston, which has got some pretty good sized pieces of property. Davie, which is horse country. That's where the rodeos happen. Oh yeah, we do rodeos here. They've got some big pieces of property there. There's another town just west of Palm Beach that's big horse country. They have huge horse shows there, like jumping and dressage and that kind of thing. So
yeah, horses that like the hot weather, I guess, huh?
Yeah, well, horses they don't like being cold, I'm sure. They also have neighborhoods. They have a lot of neighborhoods that are airports. Like you have instead of a garage, you have a hangar next to your house.
Now that's awesome, and that goes along with my Sky Sports and a great place to fly. And a lot of pilots move down there, so they actually have this like a runway in the neighborhood.
Yeah, it's a lot of times it's a flat grassy piece of land. I have a friend who's got he's got an 85-acre ranch. He's got his own airstrip and a hangar. But this is like a community, like a planned community that has a runway, and everybody has a hangar that they park their planes in, and then they go out and use the runway. Now they're not going to be big planes because there's not, that's a lot of land you got to use there. But yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and then HOAs sounds like HOAs are huge down there. We have some HOAs here, but they're not these big gated and restaurants and pools and clubhouses and all that. We have a couple of them, but not for the most part. So it sounds like you have pretty serious HOAs with serious amenities. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about, is every community an HOA with a gate around it?
Well, if it has a gate, it's got an HOA. Basically, an HOA is an association that handles all of the bylaws and rules of an area. It could be one building within a community, or it could be a number or the whole community. Like, for example, that St. Andrews that I mentioned earlier, that one, if you want to buy a house there, you got to join the club, and the price has gone up, but it was $150,000 just to get in the door. And that's you have to join the club. And then there are annual fees, and then you have to pay association fees, which do all the maintenance, and then you buy the house. And their houses there go from $600,000 to $12 million.
And what about an average HOA fee? I know they can fluctuate a lot depending on the amenities and what it is, but here I can tell people that usually $80 to $120 is kind of reasonable. If I see above $120, $200, $300 something, that makes me want to question why it's that high. Or if it's lower, I want to question it as well. What's the deal down there?
Every building is different. Like in my building, we're paying about $225 a month for a 1-bedroom. A 2-bedroom would be about $400 a month. A place that I almost sold in Delray Beach, which is just north of Fort Lauderdale. It was a $1 million apartment, $958 a month for association fees, and there was no gym, there was no restaurant, just a pool. That's it. It varies. It really does vary depending on size of your property and the neighborhood you're in, and it's all what they believe people will pay.
Right. Yeah, and we have one. I think we have one downsizing community up here, and I'm going to quickly say because we have 1 minute left. And I think the fee there is like $350, which is crazy for here. And everybody I show it to, I'm like, the fee's kind of high. But as soon as you get somebody moving from Florida or somewhere that has them, they're like, that's nothing. I'll buy this in a second. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So, like I said, we got to rush, but I want to ask you the last question, which has nothing to do with real estate at all. If you could do anything else other than editing videos, I think you've had your fill of that anyway. What would you do other than real estate if you could do something else?
God.
50 seconds, 50 seconds.
50 seconds. I would like to be of service in some kind. I mean, I'm not the kind of person that should be in government because I got too many skeletons, but I would like to be of service. I mean, that's one of the things about home health care is you're helping people, but I don't want to. I would have a company that does home health care possibly.
Nice. And
That's
Svetlana could work for, well, no, you can let her be the equal, or you could work for her, let her be the CEO to keep the house happy.
Yeah, exactly.
And everybody, we got 20 seconds here, so I'm going to close it out. Everybody can see your info there or in the description, up or down, wherever you're watching. Contact me if you need to buy or sell a house. Call me, text me, email me, throw a rock through my window, send a carrier pigeon, whatever you need to do. Thanks for watching and listening, and we'll see everybody later. We got 5 seconds. Say bye, Sandy.
See you guys.
See you, everybody.